Hey everyone, Bok. That's it. That's the extent of my Croatian. I have time to learn. Thank you for making it so easy to greet you all. As Ivan said, I'm Sunil. I am the Chief of Product of Fanoa. Just quick background on us. We are a company that uses technology to make tax suck less for very large global companies. Now, in the process of doing that, what was really clear is that people suck at probability. People just don't think, they don't make decisions probabilistically. And I'll give you an example, just a really practical example of this. Just take my talk, for instance. If you look at the blurb that was written about the talk, why you guys all came, maybe it had some influence on why you're attending. It was written like this. Artificial intelligence is a springboard for huge leaps in technology development, but in order to turn it into an epical success, it must necessarily face real intelligence or people, blah, 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 blah. Okay, if a data scientist wrote this, it would look like this. A speech to convince you that humans are the most essential element in the application of AI. 62% of the audience will learn something new. 27% will find the conclusions really obvious, and 11% of you will think the speaker is an idiot. Possibly, due to training data bias, that number could be as high as 20%. So how do you bridge this gap? How do you actually get people to start thinking probabilistically? Well, it's about the story of adoption of technology. And it's an old story. It's not a new story. So let's talk really basically about technology. And I mean go way back to the basics. The most consequential technology perhaps ever invented, fire. Now, before you guys argue, because you're all engineers, you're for sure in your heads like, no, not fire. I think the spear was the most, no, it's the wheel. All right, fine. Let's take precious 30 seconds to address that. Monkeys can use sticks and rocks, so I don't consider that a competitive advantage. And it wasn't the wheel, because I'm pretty sure the wheel came after fire, because firewood is really annoying to carry around. Okay, so that's settled. It's fire. Fire is the most consequential first invention of mankind. So when a new technology like fire is invented and unleashed upon the world, usually this is the first thing that happens. The forest burns down. From the news, possibly, this is still happening. No, too soon? Okay. But probably this is what Prometheus intended, right? Because Greek gods are assholes. So after the first catastrophe, right? The engineer gets down, like, okay, I got to get this under control. So they get the shit under control, they make it demoable, right? They produce a really great demo and then they release it to their village. And what's the next thing that happens? Yeah. Probably the first application of this new technology is to burn the engineer at the stake. But eventually it gets mature. People get comfortable with the technology. You find ways of improving the adoption of the technology. People find it really practical. They find it normal. And then the engineer becomes a god. Or at least you hope that's what happens. This is, I presume, why you're all here. Okay, so if you really want this to happen, you have to think about not creating products. You have to think about not creating technology. You got to create movements. This guy is a really brilliant guy, Jean-Michel Lemieux. He is the ex-chief technology officer of Shopify. I recommend you look him up and listen to him. But he said, don't create products, don't create technology, create movements. And movements are composed of three things: people, process, and product. So before we get to the people side, which is really, that's what actual intelligence is, right? So people, before we get there, let's just address the technology side for a minute. Let's talk about the limitations and the current state of AI. First of all, AI is quite honestly a bullshit buzzword. Does anyone here actually think that like AI is used too often as a bullshit buzzword? Anyone? Yeah, okay, literally everybody raised their hand. I agree. Marketing told me to say AI because it sounds way cooler than ML. I don't know why. But really what we're building is machine learning for the most part. We are progressing towards artificial intelligence, but really this is about automation. AI assumes intelligence, but machine learning is automation. It is leverage. It's maybe a competent fake. The example, if you studied every chess game that Magnus Carlsen ever played and then started to beat people at chess, you are a competent fake. That is what machine learning is. And that is the reality for most of the technology you guys are going to be building over the next few years. On your way, of course, to something more intelligent, on your way to something that can decide for itself. Eventually, this combination of deep learning, machine learning, you'll start to create graphs, neural networks. Yeah, the combination will start to evolve on its own and then become Skynet and kill us all. But for now, we're still very much in control. So the reason why it's important to remember this is automation, not intelligence, it's automation, is because it's a robot. We're creating robots. Robots are levers. It's a pulley. It's a gear that amplifies information. You can amplify intelligence and stupidity. Here are a few clear examples. Does anyone know these examples? There's a really great channel on GitHub that actually lists all the disasters that machine learning has produced. Highly recommend you read it, if only for entertainment's sake, but also just so you don't repeat the past. But Zillow learned that if you use machine learning to buy homes, but forget to take into account black swan events like the pandemic, your technology will suck and you'll lose a ton of money. Twitter realized that their engineers are really good-hearted, wonderful people, but the Twitter platform is full of racists. So when they created a platform, a chatbot, to actually release into the wild, Twitter made it racist. Facebook figured this out when their chatbot accidentally became sentient and then created its own language, which I think is kind of what the Facebook platform has turned into anyway. So the major cause of the forest burning down is training data. That is typically the problem. This is the only geekiness I've built into this slide deck. Forgive me, but I'm a product manager, not an engineer. So this is it. This is as deep as I go. But the major cause is issues with the training data, starting with concept drift. So the Zillow example, where they released a model to buy homes and then it hit the pandemic and they lost a ton of money, is because the data that they used it just simply didn't reflect the data in the market due to black swan events. They didn't use a broad enough set of data to train their models. And they found they actually couldn't get a broad enough set of data. That's concept drift. The Twitter example is covariate shift. So basically, the algorithm was just never exposed or never anticipated that production environment. As I said, Twitter engineers forgot that the platform was way more racist than they were, which, speaks well of Twitter engineers. So if you want to fix this, yes, you have to improve your data. Yes, you have to be aware of these concepts, but you got to focus on people. When you focus on people, don't try to make a perfect system. Don't try to do it. And the reason you don't try to do it is learn from one of my favorite authors, Douglas Adams. He wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I'm going to bet that that is a my generation thing. I don't know if it's a you generation thing. Has anyone here read The Hitchhiker's Guide? Yes, it lives on. So Douglas Adams said, never underestimate the ingenuity of idiots. They will find a way to screw up your perfect system. You cannot create a perfect system. You have to operate probabilistically. The challenge is getting your customers, your users, to think probabilistically. So you can't create a perfect system. What you really need is a system that's trained by experts. The lack of domain expertise in the area you're applying the technology, that's where the problem lies. When companies are trying to launch this technology, looking at this survey by SAS, they clearly said the issues that we have are we don't have enough domain experts to launch machine learning into the wild. We can't figure out how to take this model that works so well in our own homegrown environments and then release it more broadly. And the reason is because they just didn't have the domain expertise in the area they were trying to disrupt. So to build machine learning, you do need AI. You guys are AI. Your colleagues are AI. You need actual intelligence. So actual intelligence are domain experts that have deep knowledge in the field of application. Why? To define success. So the engineering teams are creating the ML ops, the data science, the data engineering behind the system, but in the end, before you ever get to that stage, success, the goals for your system are defined by people that may know nothing about the technology you're developing. You need domain experts to understand this. At Fanoa, we have tax engineers. I call them tax engineers. They call themselves tax managers, but really, they're doing engineering. And whenever they define success for me, we always start at a point where I'll explain later, they think that success is 100%. They do not think probabilistically. So that will be your first challenge, educating your domain experts on thinking probabilistically. The second thing you need to do, don't get rid of the domain experts after they've told you the goals. Don't do it. You need them. You still need them. They are going to be your comparative body. So as you release results, you are comparing your results with those that the domain experts themselves would have come to. Once you reach parity or slightly worse or slightly better, it's time to actually start operating in the wild. You need those domain experts to compare. And lastly, when you release the technology into the wild, these domain experts are the guardrails that prevent your robots, well, from burning the forest down. They're the ones that prevent it from amplifying stupidity. Now, the first uses of machine learning are very often not using domain experts. Very often it's thrown into areas that, where does computer technology usually mature first? Gaming, gambling, porn. Why? Because if you screw up in gaming or gambling, right, nobody wants to talk about it or nobody gives a shit. You screw up in porn, nobody definitely talks about it. So that's where technology usually begins. But if you want to expand this stuff into serious shit, you have to know what you're doing. Nobody cares if an NPC in Unreal Tournament starts doing weird stuff. But in healthcare, when you're explaining to a mother that their child has a 92% chance of success using the decisions that your algorithms produced, it's a very different conversation. When you screw up in healthcare, people die, not NPCs. When you screw up in tax, companies die. Fanoa manages tax technology for 4 out of the 5 FANG, 90% of the NASDAQ 100. We're really fucked if we make a mistake. But we will make them. The important thing is to help our customers understand things in terms of probability. This is a huge challenge. Why? Because as I said before, our customers think that 100% is success. Our own tax managers think 100% compliance is the only measure of success. Do you know why? Do you know what they do? In order to achieve that, they give themselves the illusion of control. How do they do that? I'm not kidding. Expedia, Uber, do you guys know how they manage tax? Spreadsheets. Kill me now. $100 billion companies manage billions in tax payments with spreadsheets because they're comfortable. It feels predictable. And they suck at building tools. So to get them to stop using their spreadsheets, you have to talk to them, walk them through the gaps in their black and white systems, in their black and white thinking. Their spreadsheets have errors. The thinking that goes into building the spreadsheets have errors. When you say that you can achieve 92% compliance, all that is bringing visibility into a realm into which they had no visibility. They pretended they were 100% compliant. When you give a child a 92% chance of success, when the parent is not used to hearing anything but 100% or don't do it, you are actually improving their understanding of visibility. Let me give you a kind of practical example of explaining odds, probability to lay people in a situation where they don't understand the metrics. The first speaker brought up Dalmatian mothers, which I didn't know was a thing. Apparently it's a thing. Is that a thing? My mother may have some Dalmatian blood in her because I used to rock climb in Yosemite. And when I told her about it, which was stupid, but I finally told her about it, she lectured me for weeks about why am I taking chances? Why am I putting my life at risk? She carried me in her room, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get it. But in my conversation with her, over many weeks of showing her data, I proved to her that driving to Yosemite was more dangerous than climbing at Yosemite. But it took time. I had to engage with her. I had to show her data. I had to walk her through it. I had to give her examples. But without proving that case to her, it was really hard for her to see. I don't know if she's convinced yet, but she has stopped bothering me. So what you've got to do is use machine learning to solve for the routine. Prove to your customers that you are solving for the routine. Show them the data, get them used to seeing data. The routine is rarely dangerous. The routine is familiar. And the routine for you all is value. It's automation. It's bending the curve on hiring. That is the best source of engineering talent, is bending the curve on hiring, lowering the cost basis for what customers use to deliver value. Bend the curve on hiring. That other 20%, it's classic 80-20 rule, is going to be really, really expensive to fix. I don't suggest you stop at 80. Keep going. But use experts to cover that 80% and that 20% and consider success to be every percent of progress you make in that last 20. That's where you want to get to. Start with a routine. But before you release your next algorithm, maybe run it by your Dalmatian mother and see what she thinks. Thanks.